to Zoom. So we are up in Manassas getting ready for our listening session on accountability. So if any of you are in the area, we would love for you to come to that meeting as well tonight. But very appreciative for the opportunity to meet with you guys again and to chat. I know we started this journey a little bit ago, and we have talked about everything from transportation and the barriers and the things to think about when we're thinking about making sure transportation works for our children and our families, to parent engagement and having some really good tools and resources, both from attendance works around health and around strategies. Dr. Mitchell shared a door knocker that he used, and we also had Louisa County share some things about meaningful engagement. And last time we met, feels like last week, but the last time we met, we talked a lot about mental health and some of the challenges our students are facing. Emily and I both heard a lot of the superintendents and advocates around funding for mental health and how important it is to have sustainable funding. We have shared that with others, and we are excited to continue this journey and talk about removing barriers for our families. We are incredibly thankful to have all the diverse perspectives, from superintendents to school board members to parents to teachers and principals. So really excited to have everyone on the call and everybody's feedback. And I think tonight's agenda, we're going to spend a lot of time talking together about what we want to do to make sure that all of these great conversations, all of these great resources really change opportunities for children across the Commonwealth, not just in the school divisions that are represented on this call. So we're excited to have a good chunk of time talking about that. But we're going to start the agenda tonight with No Kid Hungry. And I am particularly thankful for No Kid Hungry and the work that they're doing, because as we have started this journey and as we've talked about attendance, we heard a lot about food insecurities, and we heard a lot about how important it is for students who may not have regular routines at home, or students who may not have the opportunity to have breakfast at home, to have some of the resources that No Kid Hungry has. So Emily Ann, I think you have this portion to kick us off and start talking with No Kid Hungry, and really appreciate that. I'm going to do a little technical wizardry over here while they get started.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And we definitely heard this as a theme. So Sarah, I am going to attempt to be the tech wizard, but may need Todd's help there and Superintendent Coons to make you.
I'm happy to share my screen.
Share. Perfect. Beautiful.
Yes.
All right. Well, some of you know Sarah and her team well. And so for those who don't, I'm only a handful of months in here, and everyone refers back to No Kid Hungry. And so we really wanted to talk through some of the best practices, both from their lens, but also in collaboration with some of you, and what's working in ensuring that we talk about food and the methods we can help for tackling some of our absentee stats and students through food and support with successful programs like they're going to outline today. So Sarah, kick it over to you.
Thank you so much, y'all. It is such a pleasure and an honor to have a few minutes of your time this evening. My name is Sarah Steele. I'm the director of No Kid Hungry Virginia, and I wrote this very long title to this presentation, Connecting Breakfast After the Bell and Improvements to Chronic Absenteeism, but I easily could have just titled it School Breakfast is Awesome, because that is really how I feel, and I hope that that is the through line that you take away from this presentation. I know it's a little topsy-turvy to lead with a thank you rather than ending with it, but I really do want to take a moment to express my appreciation to Secretary Gadara, Deputy Secretary Gullickson, and Superintendent Coons for centering school nutrition as one of your priorities to address chronic absenteeism. It's a great joy of my job to be able to celebrate school nutrition staff across Virginia and to bear witness to the hard work that they do every day in our school cafeterias to help students thrive. And it's just so cool to be able to talk to their role in all of this that y'all have been talking through so many different facets over the last few months. So I don't take that for granted at all. So I like to tell you where we are and where we're going. So over the next few minutes, we'll cover who I am and who I work for at No Kid Hungry, Virginia. What is breakfast after the bell anyway, and how does it relate to chronic absenteeism? I'll share some resources and then I'll wrap us up, but please, so many of y'all on the call already have experience with breakfast after the bell programs, with really centering the perspectives of your school nutrition departments and the expertise that they have. So jump in at any time. I would love that so much. So this is the slide that I use to kick off any presentation that I give. No Kid Hungry Virginia is a campaign of the national nonprofit Share Our Strength. So we do have a 50-state strategy, and we're in good company with friends in No Kid Hungry Texas and No Kid Hungry Florida. But I've been in my role since about 2016, and my North Star is making sure that kids have access to 3 meals a day, 365 days a year. And that is in service of so many different aspects of our children's lives, certainly their physical well-being, whether that's fewer trips to the nurse's office now, but also a decreased likelihood of longer-term diet-related diseases like heart disease and diabetes. So it's their physical well-being, it's their mental health. We know that students that maybe are living in households that are struggling with food insecurity, they internalize that anxiety, that concern about budget, and school nutrition programs, school meal programs can help families stretch their budgets and maybe relieve some of that pressure that especially our secondary school students are carrying with them throughout the day. So physical health, mental health, absolutely academic success, right? There is a ton of research out there. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it today, but just lots of different studies that link adequate nutrition to higher test scores and better focus in class and less disruptive classrooms. So this is about how students feel in their brains and their bodies, but also how they can perform in school. And I love my job. I hope y'all can tell that, but one of the great parts of my job is being able to sit down with school nutrition staff that work in your division, whether it's the school nutrition director who sits in the central office or the cafeteria managers and staff that are in the schools every day, and ask them what they need to be successful. So my approach looks different in every single one of our divisions, but it's usually some combination of these things that I hear. Maybe it's a need for training and technical support. So we have a lot of resources and webinars. I do a lot of in-person presentations. Maybe it's grant funding, so dollars to support equipment and different things that your kitchens might need. Maybe it's looking at technology systems and continuing, to help those evolve and move along with kind of the way that technology has evolved. And then absolutely outreach and awareness, whether that's for the families to make sure they know how to get connected to important food resources, but also just the general public so that they know why hunger is a challenge, that hunger is a challenge in every single county and city in Virginia, and that it does have really real impacts for how students feel and how they can perform in school. So that's a little bit about me at No Kid Hungry. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what is breakfast after the bell, and then we'll take a quick pause and see if anybody has any thoughts about what I just covered. But breakfast after the bell is taking a look at the way breakfast is traditionally served and kind of flipping it on its head. So for so many years, breakfast was kind of served in the cafeteria and only in the cafeteria to only the students, who would go out of their way to seek it out. And that would usually be before the school day even begins. So before that first bell has rung. So we know that can be a challenge for a whole bunch of reasons, whether that's transportation schedules or the stigma of having to self-identify a need and separate yourself from your peers, maybe making that trade-off between, heading down to the cafeteria or talking to a teacher before class or hanging out with friends before class. Maybe the cafeteria location isn't convenient for students. Maybe in some of our larger school buildings, it's really far away and they don't want to be late for class. So they maybe would opt out of breakfast. But breakfast after the bell says, hey, why don't we do things a little bit differently? Why don't we wait to serve breakfast until after that first bell and or give students multiple times throughout the morning to access that first meal of the day. So whether that's actually eating in the classroom or offering different locations other than the cafeteria throughout the school building to kind of grab and go with your breakfast, it just creates more options and more routines for students to get connected to that nutrition that they need to thrive. And here are the 3 models that No Kid Hungry Virginia promotes. So breakfast in the classroom, we usually see this in elementary schools where students are actually sitting, doing an activity. Maybe there's story time in the morning, maybe it's during announcements or roll call, but the students are actually sitting and eating in their classroom. Or in our secondary schools, we see models like Grab and Go or Second Chance, where there are kiosks that are stocked with all the important breakfast items, fresh fruits and sausage biscuits and breakfast pizzas and yogurt parfaits. And students can, choose what they need and then go to the location of their choosing. Sometimes that's a common area, sometimes that's the classroom to enjoy their breakfast. And then Second Chance, very similar, but breakfast is also served between first and second period or second and third period, making that bell just a minute or 2 longer to give students extra time to go through the breakfast line. So little changes that add up to a big difference. These are the participation rates for these different models, and these are much higher than breakfast participation in that traditional way of serving it in the cafeteria only. So that's me, and that is breakfast after the bell. I'm going to pause there. I so second Jordan's thoughts about being so excited for breakfast. It's my favorite meal of the day, and see if anybody has any thoughts they want to share at this point.
Yes, Sarah, would you mind going back to the last slide?
Absolutely.
Obviously, some of the folks here are partners with you. So Dr. Mitchell, you just chimed in. Love to hear if you're using all 3. Any tips or best practices for those not yet transitioning into this innovative model, and what's working well?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to take that one, or you want to open it up to the group?
Let's open it up to the group first.
I love that.
Yeah, Dr. Mitchell?
Oh, you're gonna put me on the spot, huh?
Oh, well, I saw the
Well,
microphone unmute, so.
oh, sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Sarah, for being here today and sharing with the group. I have worked with No Kid Hungry in a lot of capacities in the past, several videos, looking at our breakfast, in the classroom when I was in Prince William and in Fairfax, the grab and go, and of course, Second Chance breakfast. Right now in our school district, we use all 3, particularly at the high school level with the grab and go. We have actually gone to a point where we actually are now doing that with some with lunch at the high school level to give kids an opportunity to grab lunch, go to the classroom for kids who want to be able to do some extra work with their teachers, just giving them that flexibility. Second Chance breakfast, because we have kids who come in during second block, we want to make sure we're feeding them. For those who have worked before knows that at the end of the day, we have to feed every kid. It's no excuses. So I'm glad to see that other groups are using the same idea, but we have done it. And it's very, very, very successful. It saves you a ton of instructional time, and that's the key.
Thank you so much for mentioning the instructional time component, Dr. Mitchell, because that's sometimes a reason why not we hear about this. Like, well, it cut into instructional time, but we actually hear the opposite from educators. With those breakfast in the classroom models, there's that chance for teachers to get their room settled and ease into the day. I know y'all have talked about warm welcomes as a strategy, right? And that intentional activity to set the stage. It's a chance for teachers to kind of listen in to students, maybe if they're talking about how their night went or how much sleep they got, and get an understanding of what they're bringing to the classroom that day. And then with the grab and go models, because breakfast is more accessible in these kiosks, students aren't having to walk so far from the cafeteria to class. They don't have that excuse of saying, I was getting breakfast, right? It's right there, ready for them in convenient locations throughout the school building. So that's such an excellent component, I think, of this. And you've been absolutely a leader in prioritizing these programs over the years.
Anyone else have thoughts on the models that are underway? Yeah, Tian?
Hi, as a parent, I just want to comment on this. This is amazing. I absolutely love this. Absolutely love this. I can see so many benefits coming from this program. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna reach out to my school district superintendent and hopefully we can implement this as well. And breakfast in classroom. My children attend Japanese public school for 4 years when we stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and that's what they do. They do their meal in classroom. They don't have a cafeteria, and they actually have a like a food cart, like a commercial grade food cart, and roll into the classroom and serve food in the classroom, and which is great. And I can go on for another 10 minutes just for that benefit. But just I have seen it. I have seen it. It works really well. Children love it. Absolutely love it. Grab and go. I can totally see that's how beneficial for high school students. Myself, I have 2 kids. One of them is a serious procrastinators, and she missed her breakfast every single day. Every single day she goes to school without breakfast. And because her poor time management skill, and which is kind of a common for this generation, and unfortunately, the problem, she got really, really hungry around 10 a.m. but she has to still wait about another 2 hours before she can have lunch. But her attention, attention span just reduced from that point. And I have received so many text messages from her saying, "Mom, I'm starving." Well, I wish you had breakfast in the morning, but the procrastination, because she procrastinated. The benefit of having this, have breakfast either served in classroom or they can grab a go and eat at their first period. It really reduced a lot of anxiety and stress of going to school. And kids knowing I will not be hungry around 10 a.m. because I missed breakfast in the morning, I can totally see the benefit for it, for the children, like to go to school more motivated because of this. And thank you. This is great. And I'm looking forward to hear the school district who have done this and want to hear their feedback.
Thanks so much. Love hearing the parent perspective, and the chat is active. So those of you tuning in live from YouTube, we'll definitely be sure to capture this in our follow-up materials. We're seeing great buzz on some supper programs and 3 meals a day, as well as utilizing both grab and go breakfast in the classroom up in Bristol. Thank you for sharing that from a principal's perspective. And
you're way too nice. I think Keith should share.
I know, it's really impressive.
I think he should share so that all the people on YouTube can hear some of the cool things that he's doing. And then I think our next principal should also share some of the things that they're doing.
That. Keith, you're up.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Paragon.
Put him on the spot.
While Keith is coming off of mute, Carla, do you want to share what you put in the chat as well?
Sure. Yes, ma'am. I was going to say the same thing as I think Ms. Maybeth said. We do a revised version of the 3rd. So basically no kid goes hungry. So if you come in between 1st and 2nd or even later, we make sure that you have a meal. Randy Herman is our director of nutrition. She is very passionate about that. I know Sarah and I met you before when you've come over to Louisa County. And the other thing I wanted to mention that I don't think been mentioned before is it actually helps with discipline too, because you have less kids that are hangry. So they come in and they're able to eat, and they're able to kind of ease into the day. Having that meal. So I think whether it's elementary or secondary, that's been a positive benefit too.
Thanks for sharing that.
Carla, I think Emily Ann, you put Principal Mabe up on the deck.
Yeah. Faith, do you want to share what's working for you?
Faith, you're on mute.
How about now?
Yep.
So we make sure that every student receives a meal, no matter what time they come. We start with our K1 and 2 in the cafeteria every morning, but we kind of have family style, like the teachers sit with their students, giving them an opportunity to sit and talk and check in with kids and even eat with them. Our third, fourth, and fifth graders kind of do a grab and go. They pick up their breakfast, they go to the classroom. And again, that gives them time with their teachers in the morning. The teachers are in the classroom. We also allow students, like if there are fifth graders who have two teachers, they can choose which classroom they're having that breakfast with, in the morning. Gives them a little bit of community time. And then once we transition from breakfast, if someone comes in late, they receive a grab and go to the classroom, and they eat while class starts. So we make sure that everyone has a chance to have a meal as they start the day.
Great. And I think Keith might have some muting issues. Thank you, Faith. Clint, do you want to talk about the supper program a little bit more?
Sure. As we've heard, I think Keith is referring to 3 meals per day. I'm hoping he's talking about the fact that at the end of the day, when school ends, one of the things that we do is we try to provide a supper program, not just for kids who are staying after school, for various programs such as high intensity tutoring, such as after school drifter clubs. We provide supper for some of our athletes who are staying for sports. We provide supper, but it's also open to the school community. And so students have the opportunity to come back and eat a meal if they can get back on the campus. We try to make sure that we open that up to the school community so they can come back and have supper for the evening. And that's been very, very helpful for a lot of our students in our school community.
That's really helpful. I think each of you are here for a reason, because you're thinking about these barriers for students and children and making sure that you're providing supports. And I think, Sarah, you've talked a lot about the programs that are available. How do we think about this for every child across the Commonwealth? I don't know, Sarah, if you want to pitch in, or some of our colleagues who have shared their models about how we get the word out about how important this opportunity is, or some of our colleagues who might not be doing this right now. I just want to open it up to how do we spread the great practices that we're hearing across the Commonwealth for all children?
Yes, I thank you so much for teeing us up there, Dr. Coons, and for everyone for sharing the good work that's happening in your division. Even though this presentation is centered on breakfast, anybody listening, if you're interested in that after school meals program, that supper program, please let me know. Happy to talk about that as well. I wonder if it would help if I shared just a few more of my slides, and that might help move into some of that expansion of this practice. Okay, so breakfast after the bell certainly in and of itself is a wonderful program for all the reasons mentioned. A better focus in the classroom, easier to get to the classroom in the morning, giving students kind of a chance to settle into that day, creating those warm routines that reduce stressors and improve attitude. So it's so good. Also, just the fact that having access to quality nutrition helps students be healthier, right? Roughly said, if you're well fed, then you're less likely to get sick, which also contributes to more time in school versus being homesick. But we commissioned some research that looked at this specifically and found that there was a really clear link between breakfast after the bell and improvements in chronic absenteeism by an average of 6 percentage points, looking at the year before breakfast after the bell was implemented, comparing that to the year of implementation. So I feel like the proof was already in the pudding, but we do have some research here to back this up, and we'll follow up after this call with the link to the report so y'all can review it on your own time. And this is a screenshot from the report itself. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I do want to call your attention to this quote, and I'll read it for folks who might be just listening in. There's a stigma attached to being hungry, rather than ask for help or ask for food, students just don't come to school. Our students' reading levels are 2 grades below because they've missed so much school, but by serving breakfast in the classroom, we've seen chronic absenteeism drop, right? So just a really tremendous opportunity for schools to make that food access, make that breakfast program a part of the day. It isn't anything, right? You just make it breakfast in the classroom, you build it in to the morning schedule, a really achievable way to make that difference in students' routines so that they don't have to be the ones reaching out for help. The school is already providing that service. And so many of y'all are already doing this. I would estimate that about half of Virginia's schools have breakfast after the bell models, but that was pre-pandemic data that we were tracking. And I can say with confidence that some of those programs may have gone fallow during the pandemic. So this is the perfect time right now to look at opportunities to revamp your approach to breakfast and to find kind of those creative, innovative ways to make sure that students have their basic needs met before they begin the rest of their day. And I love this picture for so many reasons. One, happy kids fill my heart with joy, but also some of these pictures of the teachers in the classrooms, the warm welcome. What is a more clear manifestation of all the love and care that schools provide to our students than sharing a meal together first thing in the morning? So those pictures sure do make me smile. I'll move through the next few slides to move into some of those ways that we can continue expanding. And I hope y'all will help me spread the word. One of the best resources we have available to wider spread adoption of breakfast after the bell is that peer-to-peer sharing. Is one thing for the words to come out of my mouth. It's another for it to come superintendent to superintendent or principal to principal. So you are the best ambassadors for this program. But a couple ways that I can help: grant funding. We have rolling rounds of grants available over the course of the school year for things like the equipment that's needed to put breakfast in the classroom, whether that's mobile carts to push things, coolers that keep the food hot or cold, portable POS systems so they can, your nutrition staff can track who's eating, marketing materials, you name it. We've probably funded it in some way and have examples from other schools around Virginia. And just last week, we finalized our first grant round of the year and are happy to announce a $250,000 investment in some breakfast expansion across 12 divisions in Virginia, and are really excited to monitor the rollout of those programs. And then technical assistance and training. I'm available to come out to your school, to sit down with whoever's interested, whether that's custodians, teachers, principals, school nutrition staff, talk through these programs, talk about how they've worked elsewhere, and certainly share recorded that y'all can kind of peruse in advance of some of those in-person conversations. So that's how I can help. And please.
I'm going to make a shameless plug. Can you hold on for just a second?
Absolutely.
There are several superintendents representing several regions and several principals representing several regions and a VSBA member representing the VSBA. Those are great forums to have Sarah come talk about the opportunities with your fellow principals, your fellow VSBA members, your fellow superintendents. So given that we have dramatic data around offering programs like this, there are grant funding $4 for this. I really encourage you to invite Sarah or a representative of No Kid Hungry to talk at your regional SUP meetings, at your principal meetings, at VSBA's executive meetings. I'm going to make a shameless plug for the opportunities that can provide to spread some of the great things that you're doing and seeing for kiddos.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Coons, thank you. I love talking to people about breakfast. So that I just want to put an exclamation point on the end of that. If you need a spot filled at your next meeting, I am happy to help. And for example, we were at the Virginia School Board Association conference a couple of weeks ago and had an exhibit booth. We didn't do a presentation, but got to talk to hundreds, I think, of school board members about breakfast. And that is, it was really fruitful and promising, and folks were excited. So please keep me in mind. Absolutely. This is kind of my prove it. I have some resources available. These will follow up again after the call so that you have access to them, but just a few examples of written resources that we have, whether it's marketing strategies or ideas specifically for those high school students that are maybe a little bit harder to reach. So all of that will be available to you. And then I want to kind of just close out this section by saying I am always happy to talk about strategies to expand breakfast participation or any of your nutrition programs, lunch, supper, whatever it might be. But you also have experts in your division who are some of the best Virginians that I know. Your division level school nutrition director, your individual cafeteria staff, they are creative and resilient and rock stars, and really, to me, represent the best that our K through 12 education system has to offer. Again, that physical meal that represents so much care, but also just the good hearts that come along with folks that are in kind of that profession of cooking and serving this quality nutrition for our students. They are educators. I really do see them that way. For so many students, they are a daily important presence. I hear so many stories of, a football player giving the game-winning jersey to a cafeteria member that is always there with a smile for him every single day. They remember birthdays. They can tell when someone had a hard day. I remember the name of every single cafeteria staff member that I ever crossed in my K through 12 education, and I love them so much. So that is a reminder too. This is a resource, just like the resource I shared on the slide before. Leverage the human capital in your own division as well. Thinking about some of those other attendance strategies, like the relationship mapping, particularly for students that might be interested in a trade, pursuing a culinary profession. Can that be a connection that can be made just like any other school stakeholder? And then the youth engagement aspect also, like school nutrition is so perfect for connecting students' input to school programs, whether that's focus groups or surveys or taste tests. It's the perfect place to incubate some of those opportunities to make them feel seen and heard. And just some wonderful pictures of our school nutrition staff here. I have 2 more slides of wrap up, but I'll pause here and just see what that brought to the top for everyone. Also want to be respectful of time and don't want to go over what I have allotted.
Sarah, one of the things that we've talked about at the last few sessions is like meaningful parent engagement and pulling in parents and families. So of the partners that you work with, how many of them roughly, like percentage wise, also include any families, especially either for breakfast or evening meals?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I know of so many school nutrition departments. I don't think I could give you a number. I would probably say most. I don't think that would be an over exaggeration, that do create those opportunities for families to come in and enjoy a meal with their students. I think too, hearing that parent perspective earlier was so meaningful. This is something we can take off the busy parent's plate first thing in the morning, rather than rushing to make it to school in that 10-minute window before the bell when breakfast is available. Say, we've got it. Y'all don't have to rush. Get your students there on time, but breakfast is going to be part of the school day. We don't need to make your lives any harder. We know that kiddos are hard enough to get out the door the way it is. And I just think the goodwill that comes from that gesture to parents of saying, don't rush, is part of the day, and we've got it under control. It's one less thing you have to worry about, is really a meaningful aspect here of the connection between school nutrition and parents.
And then Sarah, one of the chats came from Superintendent Coons around the data, because obviously you're here with the Chronic Absenteeism Task Force. And so you obviously talked about the benefits of food and nutrition, especially breakfast earlier on, but if you could unpack that a little bit more in the partners you're with, how they're seeing those changes in attendance, in case there's a school leader or principal or teacher who's curious about this, maybe doesn't have it in their school yet. Like, what kind of data trends are you seeing on the impact for school attendance and chronic absenteeism?
Sure. So I apologize. I haven't been monitoring the chat since I have my screen shared. So I missed those. But I mean, I think the biggest data point I have to guide us today, and I really want to coalesce us around that, is that report showing the 6% drop in chronic absenteeism. And I think that that should be a North Star right now. Is breakfast the only solution? Absolutely not. But that report shows that it is an effective tool in your toolbox, and you have talented, capable staff in your school division. And I saw Sandy Kerwood mention in the chat at the state level as well, who are here to help. So I feel like we should capitalize on those opportunities. And because it does touch so many other aspects of other absenteeism strategies as well, right? The youth engagement, the warm welcomes, the connection to a trusted adult. I just feel like it can be pretty seamlessly integrated into your larger plan.
Well, before we let you go, I'd love to hear any other thoughts on both rolling out within your peers in your regions, since again, you represent all 8 superintendent regions, or any other best practices while we still have Sarah, and then we'll continue on with our agenda.
Sarah, can you share your slides with us and your contact information?
Absolutely. I know that the Deputy Secretary will follow up with these resources after the fact, my slide deck, my info, and the other kind of extra resources that I share. So keep an eye out for those, and please get in touch. I can't wait to hear from you.
And Sarah, we share that out with all school divisions. We also share that out through my newsletter and make sure that school folks, so all of the school leaders and school division leaders on the call, you can get the information, the resources, the deck, and contact information through my newsletter as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for lifting up breakfast and school nutrition through your newsletter. When we shared the grant application out through your newsletter, we heard from, I think, 24 divisions that day. So I know that it's reaching people, and that was so exciting to me. My inbox was full, and some of the grants we made, I think I will follow up after the fact, but kind of direct outcome of you sharing it through your newsletter.
Great.
So,
and I think in the fall, you had talked about really dropping in the schools that you had studied about 7% in a chronic absenteeism based on students who were taking advantage. So I love the fact that we can really quantify the impact of the work and think about these strategies that really move the needles, as we're going to be asking superintendents to think about how do you track and celebrate progress, and how do you know that the things you're doing are working? So I really appreciate some of those focus areas.
I love that. I don't want to overstep here, but I think this last comment in the chat would be great to lift up. I don't want to put her on the spot, but that's really cool.
Yes, Principal Maeve, love to have you close out this section on your attendance avengers.
So one of the things we've worked really hard to do is to build a sense of community. And I think all of us in a community, and when we're building relationships, one of the key things you do is you share a meal. And we have students who are historically, they've struggled with attendance. And when they know that there's someone that they're going to get to sit down and share a meal with that next day, they look forward to getting here. And they look so forward to having that time with someone that is their special someone. Typically, it is an older student and the other student is younger. And we've had just a really good, they've really received it well this year, and they've been excited about it. Not just the students who have been struggling to get here, but those who get to participate as that buddy, that breakfast buddy. So we've called it Attendance Avengers, and they work together to encourage each other, and they share a breakfast meal.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Sarah, you're welcome to stay on, but we're going to shift gears in our agenda. And we so appreciate your time. We'll follow up with all of those resources. And Superintendent Coons, I'm going to tee you up.
Well, given we're in Manassas and we have limited internet, you're going to have to pull up the deck and help me out because I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. I know I joked before I'm the millennial, but that doesn't mean I'm the tech savvy one. So just give me a minute.
Yeah, so I think one of the things as Emily Ann is pulling up the deck that we want to think about is we've seen a lot of resources in the journey of this group. We've talked with transportation experts, we've talked with attendance work, we've talked with some of our medical and mental health experts who are part of this group. We've had Carla share some of the work in Louisa County. We had Keith share some of the legislation he's thinking about. That's a lot of stuff. And tonight we learned about food insecurities. So how do we start thinking about supporting our school divisions who already have a lot of things, right? We're rolling out the Virginia Literacy Act. We're thinking about all-in tutoring. We're thinking about chronic absenteeism. There's a lot of things on everyone's plate. And there's a lot of pieces to this, right? We've talked about superintendents, we've talked about principals, we've talked about attendance advisors, we've talked about coordinating all of that. How do we put an intentional plan together? And not just a plan, say, for Colonial Heights or for Newport News, but how does the State Department support the flexibilities and the work that we have done to support our school divisions in giving them just a generalized approach? And Emily Ann, can you talk about some of the tools that we receive from transportation that we might want to talk about in a plan? Could you give us an example of one of those tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll recall that one of the great tools that's available is to actually help you track. Here's the modalities that we use for students, and let's see what they're actually utilizing. We had a lot of examples about wanting to hone in on students who are either chronically late, regularly leaving early, or not making it to school altogether. And the component that might link between that data we can collect on how those rides are working or what we think they're able to access, and then what that aligns with their attendance. One of the great recommendations from the folks here was being able to better build data sharing across our attendance specialists and experts, often at the school site, with the transportation teams, often at the school division office. And how do we better coordinate to make sure where those locations are where we might need some additional solutions? There's a whole toolkit for you to really dig into with your teams, figure out what are some of those additional modalities we might need, or loops we might need, or approaches that are more personalized or targeted at a smaller number of students, and applying it as you start to see those data trends, so that you can really hone in. Even if it fixes the solution for 10 students at a time, that gets 10 more students back into school and learning, as well as cutting down. Some of the solutions were around cutting down route times and really figuring out how can we make sure transportation is part of the conversation when we're engaging with parents, in case that's one of the lingering barriers that's inhibiting their students from getting to school.
Yeah, and as we talked about parent engagement, we shared things like the invisible line and the invisible gap activity with attendance works and some other activities to do at parent events, Title I nights, things like that. We shared the handout about health guidance for families. We also talked about how do we tier our students? How do we give supports for our tier 1 all students? Those students who are chronically absent, how do we start targeting those students, and how do we provide supports for more intensive students? Dr. Mitchell, you shared a great idea about the door hangers and how to connect and build relationships. We also had Louisa share their model on meaningful engagement and what it means to really engage with families and do that connection. If a student's absent, rescheduling them back into the school, and then sharing how those opportunities to have conversations with families have really reduced the barriers that were causing some of those attendance gaps. And I'm not going to steal Carla's thunder, but she did an amazing job talking through all of those things. And then we talked about some of the triages for our families who really truly have significant challenges or are not willing to bring their students to school. And Dr. Paragon talked about potential legislation there. We also, I think there's a typo on the slide around mental health, but we talked last time about a lot of mental health work and a lot of health needs and how we start building community partners and think about those things, and had some very clear advocacy to support mental health and how we support that in the long term and sustainability for all our students. And then tonight we talked about food insecurities and some of the ways and some of the programs and available grants that make that a no cost option for our school divisions to really bring food opportunities. And we've talked everything from building relationships and family engagement to giving students an additional instructional time. But ultimately, it's bringing kiddos back into the school, right? If I know I'm getting a warm meal in the morning, I know that I'm having the opportunity to have breakfast after the bell. I know that I can meet one of my basic needs. That helps me re-engage in the school community. I think TNU said such an important message. This is such a benefit for families when you're trying to create those rhythms and expectations. So that's really helpful. I think today and tonight, our goal is to think about how do we help build school division plans that meet the needs of small school divisions? A lot of you represented here, larger school divisions like Newport News also represented. How do we create templates and supports that then school divisions can say, this is our plan. This is what we're doing around attendance. This is what we believe. This is how we are going to work on this. This is how we're going to help our families feel confident that their children can get what they need in schools. I think one of the biggest questions I get every time I'm interviewed about chronic absenteeism is, what is the most important thing you need to say to families? And I say every single time, families need to reach out to their teacher, their school leader, and their school, because they have the resources and support to help families re-engage. So it's really important that we're able to communicate that. And that's one of our hopes in our next section, is for Emily Ann and I to really just be quiet and hear from you about ways the department can put some structures together to help school divisions build plans. And one of the most important things is we don't want to add to anyone's plate. That's not the intent. We just want to help people think about this, because we don't want, hey, principal, go do this. Hey, this person, go do this. Hey, this person, go do this. And it be random. We have seen in a lot of our all-in plans, a lot of efforts towards supporting attendance. And we want to make sure that we're being supportive and that we're providing good strategies and resources. So I'm going to turn off my mic and we are going to listen to you talk about some of these comments, like who has positive successes? What can we learn from those success stories? What would be manageable next steps? What will we encourage from the state for a variety of school divisions? What can we say to school divisions would be a roadmap for successful implementation? And then how do we support intentional planning and messaging? I've seen so many chronic absenteeism videos. I was really excited last week. Shenandoah sent me a bunch of videos that their elementary students had done to message to other elementary students about the importance of attendance. So how do we help spread that, and how will we celebrate? That was one of the key messages we had early on in our conversations, is we have to intentionally celebrate this work. So would love to turn it over to you to help us think about creating a plan. So all of these pieces weave into an intentional methodology. I know that all of you on this call are doing this, but how do we spread that and support other school divisions? So here's my turn to go on mute.
Well, Principal Maeve, I want to put you back on the spot only because you actually applied one of the tools from one of our prior sessions. How did it go? Worth replicating? We obviously want to scale what's working. So for those of you not in the chat, she replicated one of the parent activities that was mentioned at one of the last sessions. So love to hear how that went from teachers and also from your parents.
So we had a parent night just last week, and we had a couple of activities for the parents. One was on cyber safety, and then the other part was about the importance of attendance. And I went to the Attendance Works website, and I was able to print off some of those resources and put that in the hands of parents. Also, there was resources for English and Spanish, which was really helpful. I had a good part of our group that needed the Spanish version, so I was appreciative of having that. And when we got there, I was a little concerned that parents may not appreciate being asked to get up and do an activity, but they were all in. It wasn't a large group. There was only about 20 of us, but they participated, and the activity itself was really easy. They just really had to take steps forward or backward, depending on the situation that hypothetical student would have been in, and they did that, and at the end they were able to see the gap that is created between kindergarten and third grade when attendance is a problem. And they saw that physically by where the volunteer was spaced in the room, as opposed to the one who maybe did not get to the opportunity to attend preschool, or those that had attendance problems, versus the one who had been there consistently. I pointed out to them that each of those students represented a student who was equally capable, just lacked opportunity. And we talked a lot about the opportunities that their child experiences when they get to come to school. And I had families there who actually have students that have had some attendance problems, and they actually volunteered, and actually we had a really good conversation about the opportunities that their student misses when they're not here. So I was appreciative for the format and for the resource. I think it's a very valuable resource for everyone to take a look at.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad to hear it worked. Very exciting.
And I think that's great, and it's an awesome initiative. And how do we spread that? Like, Faith, you are a special, amazing principal who cares about this deeply and is integrating it in. But how do we provide supports for other principals so that they have the tools right there and how-tos, and making sure we're providing that access across all of our principals?
Dr. Coons, one of the things we've done is we've tried to offer different incentives for different groups of students. One group would be those who are there, who are present, who have excellent attendance. But the group we've started targeting this past year is the ones who, after a period of time start out poorly, and then when we see improvement after engagement, we try to reward those students too. I think one of the things we could do as we start planning how to send things out to schools and school divisions, I think we should share incentives. I'm not very creative, and I love to hear some of the things that you guys are doing just because they're new and fresh. And so I think one piece of the plan, the packet we put together, should have some proven winners, some things that people have done and are working, and just share ideas and maybe push those things out for people like me who struggle to be creative at times.
That's great feedback. We will definitely work on that. Carla, I'm going to just cold call you for a second and ask you to kind of talk to us about some of the things that you did in your plan that you think would be important as well.
Sure. And I was actually coming off mute before you even mentioned my name. So I might add that thought before I lose it, if that's all right. And then I'll come back to that. But one of the things I was going to mention is that I've really, number one, appreciated these conversations because even though we've been digging deep in Louisa into a chronic absenteeism and looking at that with the really laser focus, I still learned a lot from all these sessions. So I do thank you all for your conversations and for the resources you brought to us. But with that, one of the things I came away from the last meeting here with us together, and then even just talking with our school leaders yesterday, we used the effective schools model for school improvement and had our division leadership team meeting yesterday. And one of the principals said in one of his conversations, he was talking with a parent of a kindergartner, and this kindergartner had already missed like 18 absences so far this year. Really realized in that conversation that some of the parents that we have don't understand why it's even important for a kindergartner to come to school, are not really seeing that that. And his example he used, like he said, some of the parents think that, kindergarten is just gluing macaroni to a piece of paper. And if you've been around for a while, you think, okay, it's just arts and crafts. It's not really important. And that really isn't the case. And so we had a real good conversation with that parent about the number one, setting the foundations of healthy habits of coming to school and that commitment and the routines, and had that conversation. But then also talked about the powerful literacy and numeracy development that happens at even that age that the parent really just didn't know. So I think one of the things I wanted to share is that those conversations, and when Dr. Coons asked about what are we doing in Louise and some of those things, is to have somebody who's focused on that attention with making contact with families. So it is a team effort, a team approach, but we have the attendance support specialist position in our division. We have 5 of them that really work towards making those contacts with families. And there is that opportunity to really learn those individual needs that we can help them with. Like you had said, Dr. Coons, about contact the schools. They have resources to support you. And so we're trying to do that by contacting the families ourselves as schools, things that we learn about different needs they have, in terms of economically, socioeconomically, mental health. Food definitely is an issue that we've talked about before, but even just learning that how to educate our parents, that they're not trying to be non-compliant. They're not trying to set their child up for failure. They just really don't understand sometimes about some of the things that we are accomplishing in our schools, even at the pre-K kindergarten level, and setting them up for success from there. So I just wanted to share that piece.
Thanks, Carla. Other thoughts from our school folks? Because I definitely want to talk to Marco and some of our medical folks about other, like how we collaborate with external partners to really message this and communicate how we can all connect. So I am going to continue to use my teacher Spidey skills and cold call some of you to help us think about this collaboratively.
It looks like Chris has his hand up. So, yes, sir.
I was just going to mention, I kind of sit here with full hats. I keep thinking about my own division and what we need to do. And it's impressive what all of you guys are doing. I feel strongly, I've always done a lot with food because it's one of those things that bring people together and things. So I love the presentation today. And then Dr. Coons mentioned taking it back to the VSBA and the group and the presentation on that. And one of the things that would help me, we have a board meeting on the 15th. And with that, I don't know if y'all are coming. I hope you are, but I would love to have the cliff notes. You guys are great, but I'm more a bullet point person and I can convey that. But if y'all have the cliff notes that I can take to the whole group, and certainly invite Sarah, that was impressive, but others that we've had to do presentations. But I wish I tried to take all the notes from our meetings and the links and send that for them to prepare. But if we have a narrowed down version that would help me do a short presentation, or if one of you want to come, we'd love to have that too. But I'd love to get that information out and then start getting it on our website for everyone to have. So that would help me. So.
Yeah, Chris, I put in the chat, we'd be happy to create some kind of one pager that would provide talkers for all the task force members to share as you're going out and talking with your colleagues. And that would be wonderful. And I am on that December 15th call. So I might do a shameless plug for you to talk.
Well, I will be there. So whatever I can do to help.
Yeah.
And then for my own division, I think, if I get someone's name wrong, but Principal Mabe, I think that's correct. What a wonderful thing you did for your school. But are you the only elementary school in the division, or how do you do that with all the elementary schools, or schools for that matter?
So currently in Bristol, there are 4 elementary schools. However, at the end of the year, we will be consolidating, and we will have one pre-K 1 and then 1 2nd through 5th. We are a small division, so it will be a lot easier to coordinate any kind of ideas that we have. We use a lot of support from our communities and schools, and those coordinators actually meet together so that they share these ideas between the elementary schools, and we are able to share ideas and work together to make sure that every school has any kind of thing that we have that's really going well, they can share it and replicate it at the other schools.
Great. And Dr. Coons, and you know, when it comes down to our role as school board members, you know, we during the COVID, there was monies available that we were able to give free meals and things, and now that's gone away. So that changed a little bit. So I don't want to use this venue to ask for money, but you know, funding is always something that is, you know, the next question sometimes. And I heard they said they had grants available for equipment and things like that. And I know there's certain levels on your free and reduced lunch where certain schools can maybe get some free and others, but I don't, you know, I don't profess to be the expert, but I guess if there's any insight in the future to funding and we're grateful for the monies that have been given for the next, you know, budget cycle. I think we'll be able to carry them over into next year too. So we're grateful for that. And we're hiring people to focus on attendance, one person in our division, and that helps. But, you know, that funding has a limit, I guess, and a stop date. So we're kind of adding a position without knowing how to fund it in the future.
Yeah, that's something that we've gotten a lot of feedback on, and we're trying to determine how to collect the data to show that these things are making impact to work on sustainable funding. But we shameless plug here as well, as you're plugging for funding, we need school divisions to be willing to help us collect that data to demonstrate the case that the funding needs to be reoccurring. So I think we need to think about partnership. It's something my team and I are starting to think about, is how do we build partnership with some of our school divisions to really collect data to show the return on investment and show how these dollars really change opportunities for kiddos. So we're going to need support there to be able to tell that story well and to show the impact. I did speak to the legislature and thank them yesterday for the flexible funding that all of our school divisions are working on for attendance, but we will need to continue to demonstrate how that impact is being made. So happy to chat with you offline on a couple of those things, but for everybody, I think the No Kid Hungry dollars and the grants that we continue to promote in the newsletter are incredibly important long-term sustainable options for some of these meal opportunities, as well as some of the equipment that Sarah shared. So we have seen a lot of school divisions, and she said over half in the Commonwealth really take advantage of those feeding programs from the grants from No Kid Hungry. They do a lot of work across the state. So I encourage anyone on the call or anyone who's listening to really think about applying for those, because that is an additional reoccurring set of dollars for you.
And we're not just we're not just willing to partnership, but we appreciate the partnership we already have with you guys. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. And those are all great points of feedback. And we've got action to do, Superintendent Coons and myself. I wanted, Tian, I'm going to come back to you in just a minute. I wanted to tee up Dr. Farrell. You brought up some great resources and roles where pediatricians can come alongside our school divisions, school board leadership, etc. from last session. So welcome any other thoughts you have after tonight about ways that our medical community can better sort of wrap around and support the efforts around getting our youth back into school.
Sure. Hey, first, thanks for having us on the committee. I think you know, as a pediatrician, we are your kindred spirits in the healthcare world, and hearing all of your dedication to children just fills me with joy. And you know, we do the same thing on our end. And I think first and foremost, I just wanted to add, for you guys to know, we do have a school health committee. I just want you to know it exists. The Virginia AAP does. They are a resource for each one of you. And even though we may not have somebody from our committee in your area, we can always try and find someone to help support you if you need education from a healthcare standpoint with all the resources I gave you last week. Secondly, I think we still need to work on communication between schools and healthcare practitioners. I did forward a form there, and I think the pediatricians and doctors need to think of chronic absenteeism as a next vital sign. We are often unaware of how absent some of our patients are, and I think this issue needs to come to the forefront for all of us. And we will do our part as a school health committee to try and push that. And looking for communication with school nurses is, I think, paramount. And lastly, I think we're coming down to how do we change behavior? And I think we need to take some lessons from public health. And I was thinking about some of the questions you guys posed to me last week. And you remember when this pandemic first started, we started that whole big catchword was flatten the curve. And we're all trying to flatten the curve. Well, by doing so, we created another curve, and that is this chronic absenteeism. And just continue to use that message to say, okay, we have another curve that we need to flatten, and it's really imperative for our children's overall health and well-being. And so how we get that out there, again, we're willing to help you guys out in any way. Feel free to reach out to me as this group concludes, and we'll do what we can. So thank you.
Thank you. And we will be pushing out those health supports as well as resources from tonight later this week. So stay tuned in case you missed those. All right, Tian, you're up.
Hi, and I think the question comes down to we have this collective knowledge and the resource at the Virginia level, at the Department of Virginia level, and Department of Education. How to promulgate it to each school division. And from what I heard, there has been newsletter containing the resources we have discussed to the principal, to the superintendent of each school divisions. But that's not my experience, at least after I talked to my superintendent. I don't know how carefully the superintendents, like especially in bigger school division, and how much attention they pay to newsletters and the things just on a piece of paper. I'm wondering if we can just do a all hands type of webinar or like a virtual conference of all superintendent of all school divisions, and have a panel discussion inviting people like the school divisions who have success in addressing the absenteeism with some of the resources we have discussed here, such like if we can have like Carla or Dr. Mitchell or Principal Mabe or Dr. Farrell, and all on the panel, do condense the version of a presentation that we have done for the past discussions, and have a one-pager list all the resources and at the fingertip for all superintendent. And I think this action need to be taken, and actually, for lack of better word, I don't want to say shovel this down the superintendent's throat, but we at a point, the chronic absenteeism issue is so severe, and we need to address it. I don't think a newsletter sent to the principal superintendent's inbox can address it, and action need to be taken. And the shared wisdom that is what I found is most helpful. And I think especially for the divisions who have not implemented take advantage of the resources, they need to hear the success stories from the divisions who has, like Louisa district.
Dr. Kuntz, perhaps maybe I can comment on that if possible.
I would love that, Dr. Mitchell.
Sure. First of all, Tian, I appreciate your thoughts regarding the suggestion. I will say the newsletter does go out to all superintendents. I always believe it is our responsibility as a leader, particularly as a leader of any school division, to be able to have not only access to the information that's been disseminated from the state level, but also to make sure that the key leaders in your district get it. The moment I get a newsletter, I tear it down. And what I normally do is I take the key piece of the newsletter and I assign it to the key directors within my district. There's a reason why I hired them for a position, and it's their responsibility to attend to it. In addition to that, all three of my executive directors, which makes up of my two I don't have assistant superintendents or chiefs because we are small, but I do have 2 executive directors, one for professional learning and one for accountability. And they too get copies of the newsletters and make sure that people within the department gets it. So that's the first piece. So whether you're in a big division or small division, I do believe it's your responsibility to make sure that your key leaders get the information. Second to that, perhaps I will provide a suggestion to what Tian suggested. I sit as the Region 3 representative for the Virginia Association of School Superintendents in terms of the Professional Development and Planning Committee. Right now, we are planning our fall VAS and VASPO conference, and we'll be planning our spring conference in Roanoke. Perhaps, Dr. Kuntz, maybe one of the things that we can do is maybe we can collaborate on this with some of the other superintendents, whether it's Chip, or others on the call. We can then maybe put together a slide deck with some of the high leverage strategies in each area and maybe offer that as a breakout session at VAS. I can try to bring that to our next planning. We are in the middle of it right now, planning the spring conference, and I can shoot an email to Scott and the team to perhaps maybe provide us the opportunity to be able to share that with all superintendents via a breakout session.
I think, Dr. Mitchell, we would even be happy to put that deck together for you so that you have, if you want to present that at VAS to all the superintendents and have a superintendent voice. And I think you just volunteered your colleague, Dr. Jones, to co-present with you, but we are happy to put a deck together to help you facilitate. And maybe since Dr. Straley happened to have an emergency board meeting tonight, he might be willing to help you out too. So we would be happy to put the deck together if you would like to use that at any point in time. And we could even make that deck something that Chris could use at VSBA. So just let us know, and happy to do that. And we will make sure there is a slide, Dr. Farrell, for your school health committee and resources as well. And happy to do that for everybody to put those kinds of things together so that you can deliver the message. Because I think, Tian, your point is we can't just keep the message here. We have to have the tools to spread, and we have to have the tools to continue to spread and keep spreading, because everyone here is in this and giving up their evenings. We know that you're giving up your evenings, but we are happy to provide those resources. Is there, Chip and Clint, as you're thinking about school division and supporting your fellow superintendents, is there a plan or a template or a set of documents that you think would, or a toolkit that you think would be helpful for us to produce along with that deck or that one pager that would help school divisions? Because I want to make sure that we aren't saying, here's all these resources, go forth, good luck. We want to kind of shortcut some of those pieces where it's a heavier lift, in particular for school divisions similar to yours that are smaller, that don't have all those extra staff members that you mentioned in your conversation.
Yeah, I think to Tian's point also, Tian, I presented at the VSBA conference a couple of weeks ago with the superintendent from King and Queen, and there were 3 board members from Fairfax County, as well as 2 of the key chiefs at that meeting, and we presented on chronic absenteeism. So all of the information we shared from our first 3 meetings, I presented that at that meeting, so they had access to that information. To Dr. Kunz's point, I think as we move forward, one of the things that we can do in terms of our colleagues across the state is really look at, I always believe in giving people 2 to 3 bullet points that they can go in and put actionable items in place right away. So perhaps if we could look at each of the sessions that we have done, not saying that any piece of information is more important than the other, but really try to figure out what can someone say, hey, I can take this back tomorrow and I could implement and maybe perhaps put something together like that from all the resources that have been shared for each of the sessions, and maybe present that, at what is VSBA or what is the VASPO, or whether it's even at the spring conference, and just get this information out to our colleagues. I think that could work.
Thanks, really helpful. We'll work on that.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. I really, really appreciate it. And I love the feedback you provided. And so like I have been actively engaged with the Fairfax County school leadership as well on this very topic, and trying to share some of the resources like we have discussed in the past. We'll continue to do it, and hopefully we'll see success. And very much love the idea of having this a session discussing just this in the upcoming conference you're organizing. Appreciate it.
Well, one of the things we wanted to touch base on before we wrap up for tonight's session, especially knowing this time of year is especially busy in your school divisions, is figuring out how to continue to make sure that the task force is useful and meaningful moving ahead. And so we obviously want to continue to capture best practices and success stories so that we can scale and replicate what's working. And also want to continue to pull in additional voices from all 8 superintendents' regions on what is going well effectively for tackling chronic absenteeism. And so we wanted to get your feedback on what a cadence might look like moving into 2024, hard to believe, and if that might be more like quarterly or a way that we can still make sure that folks are not having to reinvent the wheel and that you're able to grab what is working, what's effective. So we wanted to tee that up, both Superintendent Coons and myself, to get your thoughts there on what's most useful so that you can continue on this important effort to get our kids back into school and learning. Yeah, Tian.
Sorry, I talk too much, I know. So what I found the most helpful is the best practice shared here, especially the people here have shared their experience using the resource being promoted in this task force. And if we can promulgate that, that'll be most helpful. I can only imagine for a school board, for a school district division, they were thinking about utilizing some of the resources, but have no experience, don't know even where to start. And if they can talk to one of their peers and just learn their experience, and, the pros and cons and how to take the first step, how much it costs you, and what they feel they could have done better if they could do it again, all that information. And that's why I was thinking like kind of a panel discussion with all the experts here who have been through utilizing those resources will be helpful. Like, Caller can talk about the parents' engagement, and Principal Mabe can talk about how her school division utilized the breakfast after bell, and like specifically for breakfast after bell. My first question at the beginning of the presentation is how much more going to cost the school division, and let's say per school, to provide the infrastructure, even manpower to support this effort. Do we need to hire more health and nutrition staff? And what's the payment system going to be like? Actual software requirement and equipment, and how much it's going to cost per school? And that will be my question. I think it will be the question for a lot of superintendents when it comes first, if it requires money. So shared experience will be most helpful. And I found that helpful here by listening to the past experience. Thank you.
Great feedback, Tian. Others on thoughts on potentially keeping this going with a quarterly meeting so we can check back in and continue to bring strategies together, or continue to say, hey, VSBA needs something like this, or superintendents or principals, or we need to connect the school health committee more with the resources. And we're seeing this with our pediatricians, and we would like to do this. So is that, I've seen several head shakes and thumbs up. So I think we're getting comments that a quarterly kind of keeping this going to make sure that we bring these stakeholders back together and continue to think about how we share, how we move the needle, how we make sure that the resources are there for everyone. So really appreciate everyone's time today. Really appreciate the fact that we are in December and we are at 6 o'clock, and Marco, your hand is up. So we want to hear from you.
I think that must be just a high five.
Okay, that's a high five. That's a quarterly yes. Okay. So we appreciate each of you knowing it's December. We want to thank you for your time this evening and really appreciate the evening and the opportunity to continue to focus on our students and making sure that they're at school every day, because we know all of the hard work and all the efforts of our educators aren't able to come to fruition without our children in their classrooms. So thank you so much. We appreciate each of you. Have a great holiday.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.